You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there is a lot to get to today. Even though I posted the emergency podcast on Kenny Atkinson being fired, some more details came out over the weekend that I really want to talk about. I also want to talk about some stories on Friday that came out while I was just about to publish Friday's show, and I really didn't want to re-record it. So I'll talk about those now. I'll also give you a little bit of an update on my plans for the future of this show. Nothing bad. It's not going anywhere. There aren't going to be any major changes. I just want to put a finer point on a few things. And I'll save that for the outro for the Bill Ripken interview that you're going to hear at the end of this show. So it's going to go Bill Ripken interview, outro about the future, and then funny send-off. Okay, on to Kenny Atkinson. And there have been a lot of details that have come out. The first one that I want to talk about is something that made the rounds on Nets Twitter, that Greg Popovich could be the next head coach of the Nets. And if you think about it, if you put your detective cap on, it actually makes sense. Sean Marks and Greg Popovich are very close. Marks used to work for the Spurs before he came to the Nets. Atkinson's last game as Nets coach was against the Spurs. It is very conceivable that Popovich could have said to Marks, I'm planning on leaving the Spurs after this year. I don't want to go through another lengthy rebuild because their best player, DeMar DeRozan, is hitting free agency. God only knows if he's going to go back or not. Who's their best player after him? LaMarcus Aldridge? LaMarcus Aldridge cannot be the best player on a championship-winning team. DeJounte Murray's a really good defender, and he's got a solid game, but he's not great. It's certainly possible that Popovich said to Marks, I want to coach the Nets. He's coached KD and Kyrie and I think DeAndre Jordan before at the Olympics. And there is no doubting that Greg Popovich is a better coach than Kenny Atkinson. When Greg Popovich says he wants to coach your team, you make it happen. And this was actually a really nice thing by Marks to let Atkinson go now and let him get a head start on selling other teams on his plan for him. But don't count your chickens before they hatch, Nets fans. Popovich still needs to leave first. And he just strikes me as a guy who is either going to stay with the Spurs or is going to retire and not coach again. That's just how he strikes me. Now, it's very possible that can change. Maybe Popovich wants another NBA title or two. And he thinks that he can get the Nets there. Look, if Greg Popovich wants to be the next head coach of the Nets, I am welcoming him in with open arms. We can bring in Becky Hammon as his lead assistant. If Tim Duncan wants to stay as head coach of the Spurs, fine. Popovich can bring in whoever he wants. But just don't count your chickens before they hatch. It's very possible that the head coach of this team is someone worse than him. Like Mark Jackson or Jeff Van Gundy or Stan Van Gundy, someone like that. Now, those are not bad options. They're really good coaches. But they're not Popovich. See, now that Popovich has been mentioned, there are going to be some Nets fans that are going to get really excited about it. They're going to say Popovich or bust. And if Popovich chooses not to coach the Nets, then there are going to be a bunch of Nets fans screaming and hollering about it. It is not Greg Popovich or bust. This move was not done to bring in Greg Popovich. If that was true, then they would have waited until the offseason to have fired Atkinson. They wouldn't have done it now. This was a case of the coach just losing the locker room. And, well, before I get into that, I want to talk about an interesting Yahoo Sports story by Vincent Goodwill, I think his name was. I don't even remember his last name. His story was really stupid. I'm sure he's a smart guy. I'm sure he's a good journalist. Admittedly, I had never heard of him before, but this story that he published makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah, it is Vincent Goodwill. He said that Kyrie Irving is angling for Tyronn Lue to be the next head coach of the Nets. Look, I like Ty Lue. I think Ty Lue is a great head coach. He went to 3 straight NBA Finals and he won one of them. I don't care that he did it with LeBron James. Okay? It still takes skill in this league to win. I'll tell you right now, I'll take Steve Kerr as the next head coach of the Nets. But there were a bunch of stories when Kyrie forced his way out of Cleveland saying that him and Lue didn't get along. He didn't like how he was being used. He didn't want to be the Robin to LeBron's Batman. Why? It makes no sense. It was well established that they didn't like each other. Now Goodwill is going to try to do some sort of revisionist history and say, yeah, they actually got along. If they got along, Kyrie Irving never would have been traded to Boston. I don't buy at all the notion that Kyrie Irving and Ty Lue get along. I like Tyronn Lue. I think Tyronn Lue's a really good coach, and I think he deserves another opportunity. But not with the Nets. It can't work. There is no way that ends well. Look, you have to give Durant and Kyrie and maybe DeAndre Jordan a seat at the table here. They need a substantial portion of the say as to who the next head coach of this team is. That's the NBA. Players force coaches out. They force other players out. They bring other players in. That's the way the NBA is, and it's wrong, okay? I don't like it. I don't like that this is the NBA that we live in. That players have this substantial amount of power. At the end of the day, they're just players. Alright? Their contract doesn't say also general manager. They have one job, and that is to play. Now, I'm not saying shut up and dribble. They have a right to say whatever they want on Twitter if they want to get involved in politics. They don't have a right to blast their team on Twitter. That doesn't help anything. and they can certainly voice their opinion to the coaching staff and management, but all it should be is an opinion. You take it into consideration along with everything else, and you make your decision that way. It shouldn't just be Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving say they want something done, and poof, it's done. This isn't a Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving issue, though. This has been going on in the NBA ever since LeBron James went to the Heat. The notion that players can team up and decide where they want to play and not honor their contracts and force head coaches out. Look, when you're a free agent and all your buddies are free agents, yeah, form a super team. Okay, that's the right way to do it. I don't like super teams, but if players really want to play together, I can't begrudge it. The way to stop it is a hard salary cap, but that's not the issue. If Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving really grew disenchanted with their head coach, and this goes for if they were on any team, Nets, Knicks, Clippers, Lakers, Celtics, Harlem Globetrotters, whatever. If they grew disenchanted with their head coach, say it to the GM and let the GM think about it. Don't force the GM's hand. Look, this isn't a Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving issue. Alright, it's just not. They're operating under the same, for lack of a better word, rules that a bunch of other players operate under. How many coaches has Carmelo Anthony gone through? Look, it's not the way it should be, but it's the way it is. And I don't blame Sean Marks for making this decision. If Atkinson really felt like he lost the locker room, and if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving really didn't want to play for him next year, yeah, he had to do this. And this is the best part. There are a bunch of people saying, well, now the Nets need to win. Of course! Yes! But if Kenny Atkinson was the head coach of the Nets into next season, that wouldn't have changed. You think that the Nets brought in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving just to win a couple playoff series? No! They did it to win a couple titles. Of course they need to win now. No question. But don't make it seem like the firing of Kenny Atkinson changes that. So let me get this straight. If Kenny Atkinson was the head coach of the Nets going forward, it would be okay if they lost? Oh, they're still establishing culture? No! They're looking to take that next step. Irina Pavlova had a great thread about this. A company is founded by a CEO, and the CEO leaves for a more experienced CEO who's going to help negotiate a merger to make everyone a lot of money. That's what this is. Atkinson was a stage one guy. Now, did I think he could have coached the Nets into the future? Yes. But don't make it seem like it would have been okay if the Nets lost with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving if Kenny Atkinson was still the coach. That's a bunch of nonsense. Look, is it a failure to have brought in Durant, Kyrie, and DeAndre if they don't win anything? I mean, it's certainly not a good look. There's not a single Nets fan in the world that doesn't think that this team next year can win an NBA title. And it doesn't matter who the head coach is. Kenny Atkinson, Greg Popovich, my dead grandmother, whoever. The timeline wouldn't change. The Nets are expected to contend next year. It doesn't matter what the Lakers do, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Rockets, whoever. Regardless of anything, the Nets are expected to contend next year. The head coach doesn't change that. If you want to tell me that the Nets sold their soul to the devil here to try to do the quick fix, you have an argument there, and I'm with you that this is, counterintuitive to what Sean Marks has preached for years, building culture. But you know what? The culture has already been built. The culture that Sean Marks has preached brought in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to a team that for years, for decades, has been an afterthought in free agency. How many times have we heard this? No big player is going to want to go to Brooklyn. They're going to want to go to the Knicks. They're going to want to play at the Garden. Sean Marks changed that for time immemorial. It does not matter how the Nets do in the sense of landing free agents in the future, because Nets fans will always be able to point to the fact that they got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Now, it doesn't matter how successful they are with the Nets. The simple fact is, everyone wanted them, and the Nets got them. If they really don't work out for the Nets, then that's what people point to. Just say, that's revisionist history. But you can't think that this isn't going to work. Kenny Atkinson leaving doesn't change the fact that the Nets are a title contender for next year. And yeah, they're going to need to hit the ground running. The new head coach isn't going to have a lot of leeway. If in the first month of the season things are going south, yeah, he's going to get a lot of arrows thrown at him. Remember how Jason Kidd started off his head coaching career? It wasn't good. The new head coach isn't going to get that luxury. Now, he's not going to be fired. He's not going to be fired before he gets a chance to finish his first season. This isn't a John Beilein situation. But the new head coach is going to need to hit the ground running, get this team to the top of the Eastern Conference quickly, or near the top, and prove that they can contend for an NBA title. But that would be the same thing for Kenny Atkinson, too. And if Atkinson wasn't up to that, then it's a good thing that the Nets got rid of him. Every report that's come out has said that he wanted out. He didn't want to coach these guys anymore. And if that's true, then this firing was long overdue. It's sad. It's unfortunate. I like Kenny Atkinson a lot. I respect the hell out of him. You know how much I respect him? There are a bunch of people that are saying he could go to the Knicks, and it makes perfect sense. I don't want him on the Knicks. I will be so upset if Kenny Atkinson goes to the Knicks. Not because he's a former Nets head coach, but because he's a really good head coach. And I think he will work wonders for the Knicks. Go to Chicago. Go to Detroit. Don't go to the Knicks. Please. I'm not saying that as an impartial observer. I am saying that as a Nets fan. Please, do not go to the Garden. Alright, the final point on the Nets that I want to hit, and then I'll move on, is the notion that DeAndre Jordan coming off the bench for Jared Allen was an issue among some Nets players. You know, going into the season, I was kind of thinking to myself, who's going to start, Allen or Jordan? I thought DeAndre Jordan signed knowing that he was going to be the backup center, and he would be expected to help mentor Allen. If that's not what happened, well, yeah, that's an issue. And DeAndre Jordan is exactly what the Nets need. He's a bully inside. He's a double-double threat every night. He's not as good defensively as Allen, but he's much better offensively. The thing with DeAndre Jordan is he can go up against the Joel Embiids, the Karl Anthony Towns, and the Rudy Goberts of the world and hold his own. Jared Allen, against a more skilled center, gets taken advantage of constantly. And I had said this when DeAndre Jordan signed. People were saying it was an overpay. Well, for starters, they had to do it. Alright, if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving say they want to play with DeAndre Jordan, you make it happen. Doesn't matter if it's an overpay or not. Secondly, go back to last year in the playoffs. Joel Embiid made Jared Allen look like a high schooler trying to defend him and trying to go up against him offensively. Allen had a terrible playoffs. And you could tell that they needed a guy like DeAndre Jordan to match up against Embiid. Yeah, Jordan should have started more. Especially with the fact that this team has underachieved all year. I don't care that Kevin Durant isn't playing. I don't care that Kyrie Irving only played 20 games. The simple fact is, there is no excuse for this team to currently be the 7th seed in the East and 5 games under 500. They should be better than that. Atkinson tried a bunch of things to try to get the team going. He never really thought about benching Jared Allen. Yeah, that's an issue. Is DeAndre Jordan a better player than Jared Allen in some respects? Yes. Not all respects, but some respects. And if you're going up against a team with a marquee center like the Sixers, Jazz, Timberwolves, Nuggets, Cavaliers, whoever, yeah, start DeAndre Jordan. If you're going up against a team like the Rockets or the Raptors or the Bucks, a team without a marquee center, start Jared Allen. I don't mind that. The simple fact is, DeAndre Jordan probably should have been starting more. Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy notion. Look, one thing is for sure, this Nets team is going to look really different next year. There are going to be a bunch of new faces on the roster that Durant and Kyrie help recruit. And there's going to be a new head coach endorsed by both of them. And make no mistake about it, this is their team. It is not Sean Marks' team anymore. It is Kevin Durant's and Kyrie Irving's team. And in a perfect world, would that be the case? No. But that's the way the NBA is. Not just for the Nets. For a bunch of teams. You want to tell me that they sold their soul to the devil here? They forsook culture for the quick fix? Yeah, you can say that. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I really don't. This is a team that's trying to win next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. The time for rebuilding has passed. It's all about winning. And that does come at the expense of culture. It's just that simple. Alright, moving on to another one of my favorite teams, the Yankees. And we finally know what is plaguing Aaron Judge. It is a stress fracture of his first right rib. So, what that means is, opening day is now out of the question. Judge was holding out hope that he could play opening day. He can't now. He's going to be shut down for a couple weeks and reevaluated. To be honest with you, this injury doesn't scare me. If it was something like thoracic outlet syndrome or something crazy like that, this gave me Markelle Fultz vibes. The guy is hurt. The guy is suffering because of it with his play, and we don't know what's up. That gave me Markelle Fultz vibes. But now that we know that it's just a stress fracture, that's a pain management issue. Now, is there a chance that it can lead to something more? Yeah. If the fracture is close to his lung, that's a huge issue. That requires surgical intervention, and Judge needs to be shut down for a long time because of that. But if the fracture is far away from the lung, if it's just a pain management issue, which is what someone told me this is, then it's really not a big deal. Shut him down for a couple weeks and let him come back a couple weeks into the season. Now that we know what it is, maybe there are some specialized pain management medicines that the Yankees can try that they didn't think of before because they didn't know that it was a stress fracture. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'd be kind of surprised if the Yankees went the surgical route after this. Unless they come out and say that the fracture is close to the lung. If it's close to the lung, then yes, huge issue. He could get a punctured lung and die. Okay? That's a huge issue. But if it's away from the lung, it's just a pain management thing. That doesn't require surgery. Now, supposedly he had been dealing with this since September, which, I don't know what's with the Yankees and trying to let these injuries fix themselves. They tried it with Severino, it didn't work. What is with the Yankees not treating their homegrown superstars? I just don't get it. This was supposed to have been overhauled with the hire of Eric Cressy, Steve Donahue being removed as head athletic trainer. The Yankees are supposed to have fixed this. Now it's worse than ever. Now guys aren't getting treated when they should. You can't tell me that Aaron Judge wasn't experiencing pain all winter. Send him through the same battery of tests that you sent him through now. The only difference is you do it in December or January. And that way he actually has a shot of playing opening day. Come on! Oh man! This is infuriating! You're making huge investments into these guys, and now you're not even going to treat them? You're just going to hope the injury magically heals itself? That's not how injuries work! They need treatment! Yeah, I have a gunshot wound in my head. I'm just going to wait until the bleeding stops before I go to the hospital. Come on! These are medical professionals I'm telling this to. In the regular season, yeah, you wait. In the playoffs, you definitely wait. In the off-season, no! You don't wait! And now Sanchez has a sore back. Granted, that's probably nothing, but given the Yankees' luck recently, it's spinal stenosis. All I know is, if you're a Scranton Rail Rider, you've got to be really happy right now. Odds are you're going to play for the Yankees. They can't manage their injuries. You're coming up at some point. Your opportunity is now. You're going to have to produce. Shame on the Yankees. And it kills me to say that. Alright. I got really bogged down with the Nets, so I'm just going to focus on a couple major football stories, and then I'll do the Ripken interview, and then I'll tell you what my plan is for the future. Again, nothing bad, I promise. I just want to put a finer point on some things. That's it. That's all this is. But the first football story that I want to talk about concerns Austin Ekeler. And you remember on Friday when I said that the Chargers were going to move on from Melvin Gordon? Well, they decided that they care about the running game after all, and they locked up Austin Ekeler. 4 years, $24.5 million. Ekeler is one of the best receiving backs in the NFL, and he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. He's a good running back. He's not the guy who you want running between the trenches, but he has speed. And again, fantastic pass-catching back. But the Chargers need to find a guy who's going to be able to run between the tackles. Now, they can look to the draft to do that. They can look to free agency to do that. It doesn't matter. The point is you need a running back that's going to be able to run between the tackles. Now that you've signed Ekeler to this big contract, you need a power back. I don't know who it is, but it's got to be a guy who's going to be able to lower his shoulder and move the pile. Similar to a Marshawn Lynch. I'm not saying sign Marshawn Lynch. I'm just saying a guy who plays that type of game. I don't mind this deal for the Chargers. $6 million a year is fine for Ekeler. They just need to find a suitable complement to him. That's my only issue here. But I think Telesco will do it. I really, really do. I'm not panicking about this at all. The final football story that I want to talk about concerns Josh Norman, and he is going to the Bills for 1 year at $6 million. I understand that Norman had a bad year for the Redskins last year, and he was certainly a shell of his former self there. But we all know how talented he once was. And to put this guy with Tre'Davious White, Kevin Johnson, and Levi Wallace is scary. The Bills just made one of their biggest strengths that much bigger. How are you going to throw the ball against this team? I really don't know. You can't tell me that with Josh Norman coming back to play under Sean McDermott that he's not going to have a little bit of a career resurgence. Now, he's not going to be a Pro Bowler again, but it's a fair bet to say that he's going to improve. McDermott knows him as well as anyone. I know that Johnson is a free agent, but I'd be really surprised if the Bills didn't bring him back. Keep your cornerback core together. It's probably the most important position on the football field when you look at defense. I'll take a star cornerback over a star defensive lineman or a linebacker any day of the week. All in all, it's a fantastic move for Buffalo. I think Norman will have a little bit of a resurgence there. Certainly not to his Pro Bowl caliber play in Carolina, but he'll have a really, really good year, I think. Alright, here's my interview with Bill Ripken. You're listening to the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I am fortunate enough to be talking to Bill Ripken, the author of State of Play, the old school guide to new school baseball. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you today?
I can't complain. So, what are your thoughts on the recent emphasis of launch angles and spin rates?
Well, it's two things that have taken up a lot of broadcast time over the past few years in discussion, but I like to simply point out in the book that spin rate has been around forever. Just because we couldn't necessarily measure it exactly the way we do today doesn't mean that it didn't exist. Launch angle is the most probably misused, misinterpreted term in the game and overused term in the game. But it's safe to say that Babe Ruth had a launch angle. Every 10-year-old kid that goes into his backyard and hits off his dad has a launch angle. It's nothing more than the ball coming off the bat. But once again, now that we can measure something, we must feel a need to talk about it and name it. And therefore, it's given this connotation that these two things in baseball are brand spanking new. The only thing that's new is we've measured it. But spin rate, it's common sense. When a pitcher throws the ball spins. Therefore, it has a spin rate. Babe Ruth hit a homer. Probably a pretty decent launch angle when it came off the big fella's bat.
Yeah, no question about that. So, do you still give credence to wins for a pitcher? Because I do.
I like wins, and I will be the first one to admit, and first and foremost, an old school guy like me uses numbers, and we like more information. But with that said, don't minimize wins. If they don't matter as much as they used to, I sort of understand that, but that's almost a creation of some of the new school's thinking because pitchers don't go through lineups 3 times. They don't go as deep in the games as they used to. So I can understand how the importance maybe of a win goes down, but I like to point out there are guys that know how to win, and there are guys that give up the game in the 7th inning if they do get a chance to go through lineup the 3rd time through because they hang a breaking ball at the wrong time to the wrong player, give up a homer, and then they end up losing. So losses matter to me, and the win still has a place in this game if you look at the box score. If you see a guy who goes 18-7 over the course of the season and throws 220 innings, it's fair to say he had a pretty good year.
No question about that. I think we may be the only 2 people on this earth that still value wins. You mentioned in the book that you thought DeGrom should have won the Cy Young in 2018. No argument there. 2019, though, would you have cast your vote for DeGrom?
I probably would have.
You would have, okay.
And part of it is because he set such the bar. And there is something about run support that I will give my eyeball to and look at. And the Mets hitters, for some reason, don't give him anything to play with. But when you look at Jacob DeGrom and what he's able to do, I think if the Cy Young Award winner is who's the best pitcher in each league, I don't think there's any question in my mind that Jacob DeGrom is a guy that I want on the bump to go out there and give me 6-7 innings. I would take that any day of the week. So, but I did point out in that in the book though that even back in the day when Bob Welch won a boatload of games, Roger Clemens didn't win as many. Even the voters back then just didn't look at the win-losses. They put other thing into play. So I think over the past few years, it's been this connotation, this innuendo that the old school guy doesn't use numbers and doesn't look at everything. We just fly by the seat of our pants, and that's just not true.
No, just look at a different set of numbers. I am an old soul. I will tell you this right now. We just look at a different set of numbers. We just don't look at, WAR and FIP and Oozer and stuff like that.
Well, basically what you just described in those 3 things to me are numbers that aren't necessarily real. They're formula-based, and I'm not saying that the average is not formula-based because it has something to do with your hits per at-bats. That's how you get an average, but it's a formula that's out there for everybody to use. I know if you're an old soul, then you agree that the RBI still matters. And
no question.
I look no further than the Washington Nationals last year winning the World Championship. Their best hitter hit 3rd, not 2nd, not 1st. Their best hitter hit 3rd in Anthony Rendon, led the league in RBIs, and they also had a guy hitting behind a guy who just led the league in RBIs, who still drove in 100. And I put the Nationals up at the top when they won the World Series. So I like looking back at some of those throwback-looking lineups. But the RBI, if you got a guy on third and one out, a strikeout doesn't work for me. That run cannot score. And Anthony Rendon, on his way to lead the league last year, had some boring sac flies in the playoffs and World Series last year to help his team win.
No question about that. Well, I'll tell you what. How about a guy like Judge who hits second and only ends up with like 50 RBIs a year? I understand that health plays a role in that, and he's dealt with injury concerns his whole career. But Aaron Judge, I'll tell you, I'm a Yankee season ticket holder. No one's seen him more than me. This guy just does not hit a lot of RBIs. It's infuriating.
Yeah, and I'm not blaming the individual player in some of these cases. In fact, I didn't use Judge because he did miss some time, but I used Yelich and I used Trout in my book when I was talking about lineup configuration, because Trout and Yelich, they both have great slugging percentages. They hit home runs and everything else, but yet they're not at the top of the leaderboard in ribbies. And the last I checked, you got to score runs to win games. And in order to score runs, you got to have guys that drive them in. So if I got a guy that can hit me 40 homers, boy, do I want some people on base in front of him instead of watching him hit solo homers. I want 2-point conversions and field goals every now and then instead of these solo shots.
No question like that. I feel like a bobblehead on the other end of the line. I'm just nodding my head yes. So what exactly is tunneling?
Well, tunneling's nothing more than the 10-year-old that goes out there in the backyard and plays catch with his dad. And when the 10-year-old becomes a 12-year-old, he might be able to start throwing a little bit of a breaking ball or a little bit of a changeup. Well, the idea of throwing the same two pitches out of the same arm slot or the same hand position is pretty key to big league success. And now that tunneling has come on to, once again, not new, but named. So if it's named now and it's got that clever little name, we think it's new. But I point out that Greg Maddux, if he were pitching in today's game, he'd have a crown on his head that says King Tunneler, because he threw the fastball changeup. They looked identical out of his hand, probably until they got a halfway to two-thirds up at home plate, and then the hitter commits to one or the other, and if it's not what they commit to, they're in trouble. So tunneling is nothing more than throwing multiple pitches out of the same arm slot, same hand position, so two pitches look alike, cruising up to home plate for a long period of time.
Talking to Bill Ripken, the author of State of Play, the old school guide to new school baseball. And I got to tell you this, I know I told you this before the interview started. I'll say it again for the benefit of the listeners. Your publicist emailed me a PDF of this book, and I figured, okay, let me just skim it to get a gist of what it's about. I couldn't put it down. It was excellent. I cannot recommend this book enough, and I do not do this. Go buy this book. I swear. I'm not a kiss ass. I don't say anything I don't mean. I love this book, Bill. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I tell you what, I've been very fortunate since this process. We sent this book out, or the book hit the street, shall we say, on February 11th. I've done quite a few interviews, and I've had a couple people that have told me, that have interviewed me, that I've read it in one sitting or two sittings. And it makes me very happy to hear such things like that. I do know this, at 200 and some pages, it's not a novel, and I didn't set out to write a novel because I don't think I have the attention span to nearly do that. But
I don't
what
have
I
the attention
did,
span to read one.
Right, and what I did do, though, is when I had something like a launch angle or spin rate that would come across the TV when I'm sitting at home watching this, and I'm listening to it, and then I start thinking, and I just start making some notes. And the next thing you know is a few notes turned into a few paragraphs. Then the few paragraphs turned into a few pages, and I said, hey, you know what? I may have something here. So I view this as a guide. It's called the Old School Guide to New School Baseball, and my hope is that if somebody has the book and they're watching a game and they hear a term that's being used and they're a little confused, they should be able to go to this book, find it in a chapter, and be able to maybe educate themselves a little bit, and hopefully it alleviates some confusion.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll definitely do that. There's no question about that. And I know in the back of the book there's a glossary where you explain some really confusing terms, and I thought that was really smart. So where do you land on the debate of batting average versus on-base percentage?
Well, look, hits matter. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think this chapter came alive simply because I was addressing some of the extremists in the thinking of the new school, where I've heard statements like, on-base percentage is the only thing that matters. Average does not matter. And average does not matter. If I hear that statement, it offends me, because I point out, if you get 40 walks in 100 at-bats with no hits, you have a 400 on-base percentage. If you get 35 hits and no walks in those same 100 at-bats, you have a 350 on-base percentage. 400 is better than 350. But you can't tell me that more good offensively is going to happen for your team if you get the 40 walks instead of the 35 knocks. Within knocks, there are doubles, triples, and homers. And if you get a walk with the bases loaded, 1 run comes across the board. If you hit a double, there might be 3. So to say average doesn't matter is basically saying hits don't matter, and I do not believe that, and it's quite an offensive statement if someone makes that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And going back to Judge, I feel like I'm picking on Judge. I love Judge. You know, he's a guy who, if the ball is a millimeter outside the strike zone, and Joey Vando's the same way, a millimeter outside the strike zone, he'll take the pitch. This guy's the best hitter on the team. How is he taking that pitch?
Well, they either have more patience than I would ever have, or a better eye, or just a better understanding of themselves. But I think, to your point, let's face it, the intentional walk has been designed by managers on the defensive side. They want to intentionally walk somebody or pitch around somebody to what? To get to the next hitter. So if the next hitter can't get the job done, then it's success by the manager on making a decision like that. So I'm kind of with you on some of these guys that really keyhole, and they have to have the ball over the center part of the plate, especially with men on base. I mean, wouldn't you be okay with him reaching out and hitting the ball that might be in the other batter's box as long as he drives in a run? I like runs. Put points on the board, and I feel pretty good about my chances. The pitch around, the intentional walk, all those things were designed as strategy by the opposing manager. And if they're okay with you walking, maybe the walk isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, no question about that. So what tools do you think are the best for evaluating defense? I personally just look at fielding percentage, but what do you think?
Fielding percentage and errors still work for me in both categories, team errors or fielding percentage. And I understand the thought process by some on the new school side of things, because they don't think it's perfect. And I'm okay with that. It's not perfect. But everything that they've brought to the table so far, the UZR, the DRS, or the OAA, they're not perfect either. So if you're replacing a non-perfect thing with a non-perfect thing, at the very best, you got to push. And I agree with you. If you get me the outs that you're supposed to get, ground balls hit to you, you catch it, you throw to first, you get the out, you don't make errors, I got a real good chance to win the game. In fact, teams that make less errors than the other team win 60% of their games. If you do that for 162, you win 100. And if you win 100, you go to the playoffs every year. So catch the ball, get me the outs you're supposed to get me, and I'll look at that.
I'm with you there 100%. So what improvements do you think can be made to the game? Do you like the robo-umpires? Do you like the universal DH? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would want the DH to be in both leagues.
I'm with you there.
The National League's the only league in baseball in the world that has the pitchers hitting. Japan doesn't. Korea doesn't. AAA, when two National League clubs play each other, they have the right to have DHs. They have the option. AA, DH. A-ball, DH. College, DH. High school, DH. So it's really the only league in the world where the pitchers hit. And if we're really looking for offense in the game, the pitchers, I believe, hit it somewhere around $110 collectively. DHs hit about 250 with 25 homers on the year. I'll take the 250 with 25, and let's stop the madness of having the pitcher. In fact, a couple times last year, pitchers in the big leagues got their first professional bats. Their first professional at-bats were at the big league level because they didn't hit in the minor leagues.
That's incredible. Wow. What are your thoughts on the Astros sign stealing, and how can we prevent it?
Well, hopefully moving forward, it's very clear the Astros went above and beyond. And hopefully with this investigation still pending on the Red Sox for 2018, once this happens, I believe the commissioner and the Players Association will get together and they will come up with, if this happens in the future, players will probably face some punishment. So I was okay with what the commissioner did, handing down the punishment for the manager and the general manager of the Astros and leaving players out of it, because I believe he had to use the players to get information so we found out exactly what Houston was doing. And on top of that, there's also the CBA's up at the end of 2020, and I don't think the commissioner really wanted to go into lawsuits dealing with the Players Association to try to start a new CBA possibility. So I think moving forward, it's a little ugly now, but I think the game's going to be better for it.
Talking to Bill Ripken, the author of State of Play, the old school guide to new school baseball. So I have a two-part question for you.
Okay.
If you were a GM in a perfect world, how would you construct your roster, and how would you like the lineup to be arranged?
Well, I want my best hitter hitting third and fourth. I want some big old donkeys in the middle that can do their work, and I'll figure the stuff out after that. But if I was kind of in charge of a squad now, how do you build a squad? It's not any different than how the 96 Yankees were built. They drafted this core group of guys that we've talked about for years, and they developed them through their minor leagues. They came up together, and then they added pieces around them. So if I look at the World Series teams, the multiple World Series teams since the wild card era has started, the Yankees are in that mix. The Giants are in that mix. The Kansas City Royals are in there. The Atlanta Braves are in there. All these teams that I just mentioned drafted well, and they developed a core group of players. So the minor leagues is still how to do it. You can't miss on your draft choices when you lose 100 games a year and lose 100 games a year. When you have top picks, you better hit on them. And if you hit on them and you develop right, maybe in 4 or 5 years you can turn it around and get things going in the right direction with your core.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about your playing career, because let's be honest, you had a good career. Nothing to be ashamed of there. Did you get overshadowed a little bit? Yeah, but you have nothing to be embarrassed about. You had a good MLB career. I got to ask, excluding your brother, who was your favorite teammate?
Let's see, because, certainly I know I'm glad you said excluding Cal, because Cal would have been my first choice, so you took the layup away from me. You know what? I played on enough teams and had enough teammates, and I go back and I look through at some of the teams I played on. When I went to Texas after the first 5.5 years in Baltimore, Dean Palmer, Nolan Ryan was on that team. Bobby Witt was on that team. They were really good guys to be a part of. After you just spent 5.5 years with your big brother in Baltimore, and you go to a new team and go, okay, what do I expect? You run into some guys that you really like. When I played in Detroit just for a half a season my last year, Tony Clark, who's the head of the union now, was on that team. Damian Easley, Joe Randa was on that team, and really good guys to be around. So there was no problem with me ever finding, some friends when it came to that. But when I look back on it, there was quite a few guys that I was with that you sit back and you look at it, and it's really too big of a group to throw out who the next favorite would be, but there was quite a few of them.
All right, last question. Who was the toughest player that you ever went up against?
Toughest player as in position player, or toughest player pitcher to face?
Pitcher.
All right, this one might surprise you a little bit, because I faced Nolan Ryan, I faced Roger Clemens, I faced Pedro Martinez, I faced Randy Johnson. These guys, pretty good. And I got a few hits off of those guys through my days. Michael Jackson was a reliever that had that fastball slider that I couldn't hit him with a bow door. And there was times when I'd look for his slider and he'd throw it and I'd still swing and miss it by 2 feet. I think I was 0 for 7 at one time with 7 punch outs. against him, and then I think I hit into a double play on my 8th at bat. I should have just struck out again and saved my team an out. But he was a guy that for some reason, whatever it was, his fastball slider, I could not see either one of them. And if I was looking for one, I seemed to always get caught in between.
Michael Jackson. I remember him, former Mariner, right?
Mariner and the Indians and Red Sox briefly, and I think he pitched a little bit with the Orioles as well.
Okay. All right, Bill. Really fast before I let you go, I got to tell you, we're both from the old school of baseball. We've established this. When you become a GM and set up your control group, as you wrote in the book, I hope that you'll give me a job.
You like that control group chapter, huh?
I think that is one of the smartest chapters I've ever read in my life. You cannot compare, the O2 Athletics, which, let's be honest, was a control group for sabermetrics. Now we need to see if old school baseball can work with these new school teams. Let's set up a control group. It's the only fair way to do a scientific experiment. Bill, I swear to God, I think it's one of the most brilliant chapters I've ever read in my life.
Well, I think, but you know what? When they mentioned the Athletics as the Moneyball group and they made a movie about it, how come they didn't have Zito and Mulder and who was the other one?
Ken Hudson.
Yes. How come they left those big three out of the movie of Moneyball? Because you did it with 3 stud starting pitchers.
Well, how come they left out guys like Eric Chavez and Miguel Tejada? I mean, look, it's a good movie. I've seen it a bunch of times, but they really left a lot of stuff out.
Well, they left out the players that didn't coincide with the sabermetric community. With the 3 starting pitchers, you got 3 of the best starting pitchers the game had. I can win with those.
I think anyone can. All right, Bill. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate you.
All right. That was Bill Ripken. His book is State of Play, the Old School Guide to New School Baseball. Thanks for listening. Here comes the outro.
Thanks for the plug, Jacob from the past. I like that. Why didn't you do that last time? Come on. Okay. Here's my plan for the future. You know how on Mondays I do team-specific shows? I'm not going to do that until the first Monday of the Yankees season. So their season starts the week of the 23rd. I don't remember if their first game is Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's Thursday. Yeah, actually it is Thursday, now that I'm thinking about it. So there won't be a team-specific show until March 30th. And that is just going to be about the Yankees. The next team-specific show that you get about the Islanders or the Nets will be an off-season preview. I'm going to talk about their playoff runs in the same way that I would talk about any team's playoff run. There aren't going to be specific episodes there. The only team-specific episodes that you are going to get for the foreseeable future are Yankees-based. There may be some Jet stuff after the draft, but for consistent content when it comes to team-specific episodes, it's going to be the Yankees. Also, let me recap my plan for next week. March 16th, first 4 preview, and hopefully an interview with a really good friend of mine about the tournament and NFL free agency. St. Patrick's Day, no show. March 18th, my birthday, no show. March 19th, round of 64 preview. March 20th, no show. March 21st, round of 32 preview. It's going to be very hard to get that show produced, but I will get it done. March 22nd, no show. March 23rd, NFL free agency recap. I'm going to go team by team, breaking down what they did and who they let walk, who they signed, who they traded for, all that good stuff. March 24th, I have an interview lined up. I'll leave you in suspense as to who it is. March 25th, Sweet 16 preview. And March 26th, MLB opening day, I'm going to do a big season preview with an interview attached to it. March 27th, nothing special. There will be a show, I just don't have anything lined up for it. And April 2nd, the Yankees home opener, there will be no show. Okay, I hope that all made sense. I told you that it was nothing bad. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me for a long time. Alright. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that I feel like I collided with a Mercedes Benzinger.